I didn't think a single accidental tap could mess with my head this much, but that's exactly how it started. It was late, I was half asleep, scrolling through my phone like I always did when I couldn't shut my brain off. Mindless videos, random posts, nothing important. And then Dave showed up on my feed. Yeah, that Dave. We'd known each other for about a year. Same gym, same occasional coffee spot, same loose circle of friends, but not close. He was one of those guys who just existed around you. Easygoing, confident, always joking with everyone. The kind of guy who made people feel comfortable without even trying. Also the kind of guy I tried not to look at for too long. Anyway, he had posted something, just a picture. Shirt slightly lifted, sweat on his skin, probably right after a workout. Nothing crazy. But the lighting, the angle, it hit different. Before I even fully registered what I was doing, my thumb tapped the screen. Liked. The second it happened, my stomach dropped. Shit, I muttered, sitting up in bed like that would somehow undo it. I stared at the screen for a few seconds, debating. Unlike? Pretend it never happened? Would he notice? Do people even notice that stuff? I unliked it. Then I liked it again. Then unliked it. I don't know what kind of idiot ping-pongs a like that at 1:30 a.m., but apparently, that night, it was me. I finally locked my phone and tossed it onto the bed, groaning into my pillow. Relax, Gerald. It's just a like. Nobody cares. Except I cared. Because Dave wasn't just some guy. And that wasn't just some reaction. I'd spent the last year pretending I didn't notice things about him. The way his hand would linger a second too long when he passed you something. The way he'd look at you directly when you were talking, like you were the only person in the room. The way he smiled, slightly crooked, like he knew something you didn't. And yeah, I noticed his body too. I'm not blind. But none of that mattered because, as far as I knew, Dave was straight. Always talking about girls, always surrounded by them. So whatever I felt? Irrelevant. That's what I kept telling myself. Still, I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, I tried to act normal. Coffee, quick shower, gym bag over my shoulder, routine. If I kept everything the same, maybe my brain would stop overthinking a stupid accidental like. Except Dave was there. Of course he was. Leaning against the counter near the entrance, talking to one of the trainers, laughing like he always did. My chest tightened for no good reason. I considered turning around. Seriously. Just leave? Come back later. But that would be insane, so I forced myself to walk in like a normal person. Yo, Gerald. I froze for half a second. Dave was looking right at me. Hey, I replied, trying to sound casual as I dropped my bag into one of the cubbies. He pushed himself off the counter and walked over, wiping his hands on a towel. Up close, he smelled like soap and something faintly minty. You disappeared yesterday, he said. Skipped leg day. I'm disappointed. I huffed out a quiet laugh. Yeah, well, I value my ability to walk. He smirked. Weak. There was a beat of silence, not awkward exactly, but charged. At least it felt that way to me. Then he tilted his head slightly. You were up late, he said. My stomach dropped again. What? He shrugged, casual. You liked my post. Oh. So he did notice. Yeah, I said, immediately wishing I had a better response. Couldn't sleep. His eyes stayed on me a second longer than necessary. You liked it twice. I blinked. What? Dave's smirk widened just a little. Or liked, unliked, liked again. Something like that. I felt my face heat up. You're tracking that now? Nah, he said, leaning a little closer. Just happened to be awake. There was something in his tone. Not teasing exactly, but not neutral either. I forced a shrug. It was just a picture. Yeah, he said quietly. It was. Another pause. And for some reason, neither of us moved. It reminded me of something I'd read once, that tension doesn't show up all at once. It builds in small moments. Quiet ones, the kind you could easily ignore if you tried hard enough. I should have brushed it off. Made a joke. Walked away. Done literally anything normal. Instead, I stayed there. So, Dave said, his voice a little lower now. You liked it? I swallowed. Yeah. Why? That question hit harder than it should have. I could have said anything. Easy answer, simple answer. Instead, what came out was, it looked good. The second I said it, I knew there was no taking it back. Dave didn't respond right away. He just looked at me. And then, slowly, he smiled. Not his usual easy grin. Something different. Yeah? He said. My heart was pounding now, way too fast for a conversation that should have meant nothing. Yeah. He nodded once, like he was filing that answer away. Good to know. And just like that, he stepped back, grabbed his water bottle, and headed toward the weights. Leaving me standing there, completely thrown off. I exhaled slowly, running a hand through my hair. Great, I muttered to myself. This is going to get weird. I had no idea how right I was. I told myself I was overthinking it. That the conversation didn't mean anything. That Dave was just being Dave, confident, a little teasing, always pushing people just enough to get a reaction. But the problem was, I did react. And now I couldn't stop replaying it. The way he noticed the like. The way he brought it up. The way he asked why. That wasn't nothing. I tried to shake it off and focus on my workout, but it was useless. Every time I moved between sets, I was hyper-aware of where he was. And somehow, no matter where I went, I kept catching him looking at me. Not constantly. Not obvious enough to call out. Just enough. At one point, I was at the bench press, headphones in, trying to zone out, when I felt someone step up behind me. Need a spot? I didn't even have to look. I'm good, I said, sitting up and pulling one earbud out anyway. Dave was already there, hands resting casually on the bar like he'd been planning to step in whether I said yes or not. Come on, he said. You're about to fail that last rep, I can see it. I scoffed. You're not psychic. He raised an eyebrow. Do the set. I hesitated, then laid back again, more to prove him wrong than anything. First rep fine. Second fine. Third slower. Fourth. Yeah, okay, maybe he was right. The bar dipped slightly, and before I could even react, his hands were there, steadying it. Not taking over, just there. Got you, he said. His voice was close. Too close. I pushed through the rep, then sat up quickly, exhaling harder than necessary. Told you, he added, a hint of a smirk in his voice. Lucky guess. Sure. But he didn't move away right away. His hands were still lightly on the bar, his body just a little too close to mine. Close enough that I could feel the heat coming off him, the faint brush of his arm against my shoulder. It would have been nothing. Except it didn't feel like nothing. You're distracted, he said. I glanced at him. I'm working out. Yeah, he replied, eyes flicking over my face. But your head's somewhere else. I let out a short laugh. You always analyze people like this. Only when they like my posts at 1 a.m. There it was again. That same thread pulling tight between us. I shook my head, grabbing my water bottle just to have something to do. You're really stuck on that, huh? Dave shrugged, but there was something intentional in the way he held my gaze. Just curious. About what? About you. That wasn't what I expected. For a second, I didn't know how to respond. And he didn't rush to fill the silence. He just watched me. It reminded me of those quiet, building moments you don't notice until you're already deep in them, when something shifts, and suddenly everything feels just a little more charged than it should. I cleared my throat. There's not much to be curious about. Dave huffed out a quiet laugh. Yeah, I don't believe that. Why not? Because you act like there is. I frowned slightly. What's that supposed to mean? He leaned back against the bench, crossing his arms. You keep things controlled. Like you don't want people to look too closely. That hit closer than I was comfortable with. I forced a shrug. Or maybe I just mind my business. Maybe, he said. Or maybe you're just careful. Something about the way he said it made my chest tighten. Careful about what? I asked. Dave held my gaze for a second longer than necessary. Then he smiled again, small, knowing. You tell me. I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. You're reading way too much into this. Am I? Yes. Another pause. Then, without warning, he reached out and grabbed my wrist. Not rough. Not aggressive. Just firm enough to stop me from turning away. Then don't overthink it, he said quietly. My pulse spiked. His hand was warm. Steady. And he didn't let go right away. I looked down at where he was holding me, then back up at him. Neither of us moved. It was such a small thing. Nothing dramatic. Nothing obvious. But it didn't feel casual. Not even close. After a second, maybe two, he released me, like it hadn't meant anything at all. Finish your set, he said, stepping back. Just like that. Like he hadn't just completely thrown me off. I stared at him for a moment, trying to figure out what the hell had just happened. Yeah, I muttered finally. Sure. But my focus was gone. Completely. Because now it wasn't just the accidental like. It wasn't just a weird conversation. Something had shifted. And the worst part? I didn't hate it. I should have put some distance between us after that. That would have been the smart move. Instead, I kept showing up at the same time every day. And somehow, so did Dave. At first, I told myself it was coincidence. Same schedules, same routines. It made sense. But after the third day in a row of running into him within minutes of arriving? Yeah. That didn't feel random anymore. And the energy between us? It didn't go away. If anything, it got worse. By midweek, we'd fallen into this weird rhythm. We'd start separately, do our own thing, then somehow end up near each other. A quick comment here, a small joke there. Nothing obvious. Nothing anyone else would notice. But underneath it, something was building. It was in the way he'd stand a little too close when talking to me. The way his hand would brush mine when passing a dumbbell, and neither of us would pull away immediately. The way he'd look at me sometimes, like he was trying to figure something out. Or maybe like he already had. And I wasn't helping. Because I wasn't pulling back. I kept telling myself I was just letting things happen. Not reading into it. Not assuming anything. But that was a lie. I was reading into it. I just wasn't stopping it. The moment everything tipped a little further happened on Thursday. The gym was quieter than usual. Late evening, most people already gone. I was finishing up, wiping sweat off my neck with a towel, when Dave walked over. Done already? He asked. Yeah, I said. You. He shook his head. One more set. I nodded. All right, I'm heading out then. I grabbed my bag, slinging it over my shoulder. Gerald. I paused. There was something in the way he said my name, lower than usual, more deliberate. I turned back. Yeah? He hesitated. Which, honestly, caught me off guard more than anything else. Dave didn't hesitate. Ever. You busy? He asked. My grip tightened slightly on the strap of my bag. Depends. On what? On what you're about to say. That earned a small smile. Fair, he said, stepping a little closer. I was gonna grab something to eat. I raised an eyebrow. And? He exhaled lightly, like he was choosing his words more carefully than usual. You could come. Simple. Casual. But it didn't feel casual. Not after everything. Not after the past few days of whatever this was. I studied his face for a second, trying to read him. You ask all your gym buddies out like this? I said. He shook his head. No. Just the ones who like your posts at 1 a.m.? A quiet huff of laughter left him. Maybe. There was a beat. Then he added softer. Just you. That did something to me. Something I couldn't ignore anymore. Because this wasn't vague. This wasn't accidental. This was intentional. And I had a choice. I could brush it off. Keep things where they were, unclear, undefined, safe. Or I could step into whatever this was becoming. The problem? I already knew which one I was going to choose. All right, I said. Dave's eyes flickered slightly, like he wasn't expecting me to agree that easily. Yeah? Yeah, I repeated. I'm starving anyway. That wasn't the real reason. But I wasn't about to say that out loud. Not yet. We ended up at this small place a few blocks away. Nothing fancy. Just burgers, fries, the kind of spot where no one pays attention to anyone else. Which was good. Because I was very aware of him. Sitting across from me. Elbows resting on the table. Looking at me like I was interesting. It was weird. Not uncomfortable. Just different. So, he said, taking a sip of his drink. You always this quiet? I leaned back slightly. Only when someone's staring at me. I'm not staring. I gave him a look. He smirked. Okay, maybe a little. Why? He didn't answer right away. Just tapped his fingers lightly against his cup, like he was thinking. Because I'm trying to figure you out, he said finally. There's nothing to figure out. Again, he said, tilting his head slightly. Don't believe that. I exhaled through my nose, shaking my head. You always this persistent? When I'm interested, yeah? That word landed harder than anything else he'd said so far. Interested. Not joking. Not teasing. Clear. Direct. And suddenly, everything felt a lot more real. I looked at him for a second, really looked this time. You're serious? I said. Yeah. No hesitation. No smile to soften it. Just honest. A quiet tension settled between us again, thicker now. Harder to ignore. I glanced down at the table for a second, then back up. You do realize, I said slowly, this is confusing, right? How? I let out a short breath. Because I didn't think you were into guys. Dave's expression didn't change much. But something in his eyes did. Maybe I'm not, he said. That made my stomach twist. I frowned slightly. Then what is this? He leaned forward just a little, resting his forearms on the table. This, he said quietly, is me being into you. My heart stuttered. There it was. No room to misinterpret. No easy way to brush it off. Just the truth. And for a second, I didn't know what to say. Because whatever this had been before, it wasn't unclear anymore. Not even close. I didn't answer him right away. Not because I didn't understand what he meant, but because I did. And that made it harder. This is me being into you. The words just sat there between us, heavy in a way that made everything else fade out. The noise of the place, people talking, plates clinking, none of it really registered anymore. I leaned back slightly, dragging a hand over my face. You don't just say something like that and expect me to, what, just go with it. I'm not, Dave said calmly. I looked at him. Then what are you expecting? Nothing, he replied. I just figured I should stop pretending this is casual. That caught me off guard. Because he was right. It hadn't been casual for a while now. The looks. The comments. The way he kept finding reasons to be close to me. And the fact that I never stopped it. If anything, I leaned into it. Still, this was different. This was out in the open now. You said you're not into guys, I pointed out. I said maybe I'm not, he corrected. That doesn't exactly clear things up. Dave exhaled, leaning back in his chair this time, like he was finally letting some of that control slip. I haven't done anything with a guy before, he said. Never really thought about it. I stayed quiet, letting him talk. But with you? He shrugged slightly. It's not something I can ignore. That sounded honest. Too honest to be some kind of joke or experiment. Still, I couldn't just ignore the obvious. And what happens when you figure it out? I asked. When you decide this isn't your thing? His eyes flicked back to mine, sharper now. You think that's what this is? He asked. I think, I said slowly, choosing my words. You don't know what this is. Another pause. And for the first time since this started, Dave looked unsure. Not completely. Not enough to back off. But enough to make it real. Yeah, he admitted. Maybe I don't. I nodded slightly. Exactly. The tension shifted again, not gone, just heavier. More grounded. This wasn't just flirting anymore. This had consequences. For a minute neither of us spoke. I messed with the edge of a napkin, trying to sort through the mess in my head. Because the truth was, I wanted this. That was the part one couldn't deny. I'd wanted something like this from the second I realized I was attracted to him. Maybe even before that. But wanting something and trusting it. Two very different things. You could have just ignored it, I said finally. What? The like, I clarified. You could have pretended you didn't notice. None of this would have happened. Dave huffed out a quiet laugh, shaking his head. Nah, he said. That wouldn't have worked. Why not? Because I already noticed you before that. That made my chest tighten slightly. What does that mean? He leaned forward again, resting his arms on the table, his voice a little lower now. It means the like just gave me an excuse. An excuse. So this wasn't random. It wasn't one-sided. All those small moments I kept questioning? He noticed them too. Since when? I asked. Dave thought about it for a second. Couple weeks, maybe, he said. You started acting different around me. I frowned. Different how? More aware, he said simply. Like you were trying not to be. Yeah. That was accurate. I let out a breath, shaking my head slightly. So you just decided to push it? Yeah. Why? This time, he didn't hesitate. Because I wanted to see if I was right. And? He held my gaze. I was. That did something to me. Again. And I was starting to realize a pattern here. I kept thinking I was in control of this, that I could keep it contained, logical, manageable. But every time he said something like that, it slipped a little more. Gerald, he said, quieter now. There it was again. That tone. Yeah? His fingers tapped lightly against the table, like he was holding himself back from doing something else. I'm not asking you to figure everything out right now, he said. I just don't want to pretend this isn't happening. I studied him for a second. You're really okay with not knowing? I asked. He shrugged. I know enough. What's that? That I like being around you, he said. That I think about you more than I should. And that when you looked at that picture the way you did. He trailed off slightly, a faint smirk pulling at his mouth. I didn't hate it. I felt my face heat up again. You're still on that? Yeah, he said. Because that's where it started. I exhaled slowly. He wasn't wrong. One stupid accidental like. And now we were here. So what now? I asked. Dave tilted his head slightly. What do you want to happen? That question felt heavier than anything else he'd asked. Because this time, I couldn't dodge it. I couldn't deflect or joke my way out. I had to answer. And the truth? I didn't want to go back. Didn't want to pretend this wasn't happening. Didn't want to ignore the way everything felt sharper, more intense when he was around. So I made a decision. Then we don't pretend, I said. His eyes flickered slightly. Yeah? Yeah, I repeated. But we take it slow. Dave nodded almost immediately. I can do that. I held his gaze for a second longer. Good, I said. Because something told me slow wasn't going to stay slow for very long. Taking it slow sounded good in theory. In reality, it lasted about 2 days. Not because we rushed into anything obvious, but because whatever this thing between me and Dave was, it didn't know how to stay small. After that night, something shifted again. There was no more pretending. No more acting like we were just two guys who happened to talk at the gym. Now, when we looked at each other, we knew. And that made everything feel sharper, more intentional, more dangerous. Friday evening, I showed up a little later than usual. I almost didn't go at all, actually. Part of me needed space. Time to think, to breathe, to figure out what the hell I was doing. But the other part? Yeah, that part was already wondering if he'd be there. He was. Of course he was. Near the squat rack this time, headphones in, focused, but the second I walked in, his eyes found me anyway. Like he'd been waiting. That shouldn't have hit as hard as it did. But it did. I nodded once in his direction, trying to keep it casual, and headed toward the lockers. I told myself I'd keep my distance that day. Focus on my workout. Keep things normal. Simple. Didn't happen. I made it through maybe 15 minutes before he showed up next to me. No hesitation. No build-up. Just there. You were late, Dave said, pulling one earbud out. I glanced at him. You keeping track now? Maybe, he said, watching me. I shook my head slightly, turning back to the weights. Busy day. That was it. But he didn't leave. He stayed right there, close enough that I could feel it again, that quiet, constant awareness of him. You gonna tell me? He said after a second. Or just pretend it didn't happen? I paused mid-rep, setting the weight down a little harder than I meant to. Tell you what? He gave me a look. Don't do that, he said. Do what? Act like you don't know what I'm talking about. I exhaled slowly, grabbing my towel just to have something to do. I said we're taking it slow, I reminded him. Yeah, he nodded. This is me taking it slow. I let out a short laugh. This? What? He asked, stepping a little closer. Talking to you? It's not just talking. Then what is it? I opened my mouth, then stopped. Because I didn't have a clean answer for that. And he knew it. That's what I thought, Dave said quietly. The tension sat there again. Not awkward. Not uncomfortable. Just heavy. Like something was always about to happen. It finally snapped later. Locker room. Of all places. I was at the sink, splashing water on my face, trying to cool off, not just from the workout. From him. From everything. The room was mostly empty. Just a couple guys at the far end, talking quietly. I leaned forward, gripping the edge of the sink, taking a breath. Running away? His voice. Right behind me. I closed my eyes for half a second. I'm literally washing my face. Yeah, Dave said. And avoiding me. I straightened, grabbing a towel, then turned to face him. I'm not avoiding you. Then what are you doing? I hesitated. And that was enough. Dave stepped closer. Not rushed. Not aggressive. Just deliberate. You've been off all day, he said, voice lower now. Why? I held his gaze. Because this isn't simple. I never said it was. No, I replied. But you're acting like it is. His jaw tightened slightly. I'm acting like I want it. That hit. Again. And what about me? I asked. His eyes flicked over my face. You're still here, he said. Not a question. A statement. And he wasn't wrong. I could have left. I could have pulled back. I didn't. For a second, either of us moved. The air felt thicker in here. Warmer. Or maybe that was just me. You keep getting close, I said quietly. Dave didn't deny it. Yeah. Why? This time, he didn't answer with words. He stepped in. close enough that there was barely any space left between us. My breath caught slightly. "You really don't know?" he murmured. I should have stepped back. I didn't. "Say it," I said instead. His eyes dropped briefly to my mouth, then back up. "I want to." That was it. Simple. Clear. And way too much. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew this was the moment. The line. The point where slow stopped meaning anything. I could still pull away. Still reset everything. But standing there, with him that close, looking at me like that, I didn't want to. "Then do something about it," I said before I could stop myself. The second the words left my mouth, I felt it. That shift. That click. Dave didn't hesitate. Not this time. His hand came up light, but steady, resting against the side of my neck. And then he kissed me. It wasn't rushed. Wasn't messy. Just firm. Intentional. Like he'd been thinking about it for a while. Like he wanted to get it right. My brain didn't catch up right away. But my body did. I grabbed onto his shirt without even realizing it, pulling him just slightly closer. And for a second, just a second, I forgot everything else. Where we were. What this meant. All of it. When we finally pulled back, it wasn't far. Just enough to breathe. Either of us spoke. Didn't need to. Because now? There was no pretending anything anymore. Not even a little. For a second, I just stood there. Like my brain needed time to catch up to what had just happened. Dave's hand was still at my neck. Not gripping, not pulling, just there, warm, steady, like he hadn't fully decided to let go yet. Neither had I. "You," I started, then stopped. "Great. Real smooth." Dave exhaled quietly, his forehead almost brushing mine now. "Yeah," he said. That was all. But it carried everything. I let out a breath, my hand still loosely holding onto his shirt. "We just—" "I know," he cut in softly. "Okay. Okay." We stayed like that for another second longer than necessary. Then reality started creeping back in. Locker room. Other people. Very public. I pulled back first, clearing my throat and stepping away, running a hand through my hair like that would somehow reset everything. It didn't. Nothing about this felt reset. If anything, it felt like everything had just started. We didn't talk about it right away. Not there. We finished up in this weird, quiet bubble, both of us acting normal enough that no one would look twice, but not actually normal at all. Every glance lingered. Every small movement felt loaded. By the time we stepped outside, the air hit different. Cooler. Quieter. Safer. Dave leaned against the wall near the entrance, arms crossed, watching me like he was waiting for me to say something first. I let out a breath. "So? Yeah," he said again, a faint smile pulling at his mouth. I shook my head slightly. "You always this talkative after completely changing things? You're the one who told me to do something about it. I didn't mean in the middle of a locker room." He huffed out a quiet laugh. "Noted." There was a pause. Then it hit me again. That shift. There was no going back to what we were before. And I needed to know where this was actually going. "So what does that mean now?" I asked. Dave didn't answer immediately. He pushed off the wall, stepping a little closer, but not too close this time. Like he was being more careful now. "Means I wasn't wrong," he said. About you." I frowned slightly. "That's not an answer." "It kind of is." "No," I said. "It's not." Another pause. Then he exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "I like that," he admitted. Simple. Honest. No hesitation. "And?" I pressed. "And?" He looked at me, something more serious settling into his expression now. "I want to do it again." My chest tightened slightly. Not because I didn't want that, but because of how easily he said it. "How does that work?" I asked. If you're still figuring yourself out? Dave held my gaze. I figure it out with you, he said. That sounded good. Too good. And that's what made me hesitate. And if you figure out it's not what you want? I asked. He didn't dodge it this time. Then I'll tell you, he said. I'm not gonna mess you around, Gerald. I studied him for a second, trying to decide if I believed that. Trying to decide if I was willing to risk it anyway. Because the truth was, I already had. The second I didn't pull away. The second I told him to do something about it. I was already in this. You're thinking too much, Dave said. I huffed quietly. Yeah. That's kind of my thing. I noticed. I rolled my eyes slightly, but there was no real bite behind it. Look, he added softer now. We said we're not pretending anymore, right? Right. Then don't pretend you didn't feel that. I didn't answer. Because I couldn't. Not honestly. And he knew it. Exactly, he said. There was a moment. One of those quiet ones again. Where something unspoken settles into place. Not rushed. Not forced. Just understood. So what now? I asked. Dave tilted his head slightly. Now? Yeah. A small smile pulled at his mouth. Now, he said, I walk you home. I raised an eyebrow. That's your move? It's a good one. I shook my head, but I was already turning in the direction of my place. Fine. We walked side by side, not too close, not too far. Talking about random stuff at first, work, gym, anything but what just happened. But it was there. Under everything. And the closer we got to my place, the quieter it became. Until we were standing outside my building. And suddenly, there was nothing left to distract us. So, I said. Yeah, Dave replied. There was that look again. That same one from earlier. Clear. Focused. On me. You gonna overthink this too? He asked. Probably. He stepped a little closer. Not all the way. Just enough. Try not to, he said. My pulse picked up again. You're not making that easy. I know. Come here. I didn't argue this time. The second kiss wasn't hesitant. It wasn't questioning. It was certain. Still not rushed. Still controlled. But deeper than before. Like whatever line we crossed earlier? We weren't anywhere near it anymore. When we pulled back this time, I didn't step away immediately. Neither did he. You still thinking? Dave murmured. I exhaled softly. Yeah, I admitted. He smirked slightly. About what? I looked at him. Honest. For something that started with an accidental like, I said quietly. This got serious fast. Dave's expression softened just a little. Yeah, he said. Then, after a second, but I don't think it was an accident. And somehow, that felt even more real. The thing about moments like that, they don't feel big while they're happening. No dramatic music. No clear. This is where everything changes. It's just a quiet realization. Standing there outside my building, Dave still close, both of us pretending this was normal now, like we hadn't just crossed about 5 different lines in the span of a few days. I should go, I said eventually. Yeah, he replied. Neither of us moved. I huffed out a small laugh. You're not making that easy. Same goes for you. Another pause. Then I stepped back, finally creating some space between us. Text me when you get home, Dave said. I raised an eyebrow. You worried about me? Maybe, he said. That small, simple answer did more than it should have. All right, I nodded. I will. I turned, heading toward the entrance. And right before I pulled the door open, Gerald! I glanced back. Dave was still standing there, hands in his pockets now, but his eyes locked on me. That like, he said, a faint smile pulling at his mouth. Best mistake you ever made. I shook my head, but I couldn't stop the small smile that slipped through. Good night, Dave. Night. I didn't sleep much. Again. But this time, it wasn't confusion. It was replay. Every second. Every look. Every word. The kiss. The way he said he wanted more. The way I didn't hesitate the second time. And somewhere in the middle of all that, a thought kept creeping in. This is actually happening. Not in a vague, maybe this is something way. But real. Clear. Unavoidable. The next few days didn't slow down. If anything, things settled into something almost normal. We texted. Not constantly. Not obsessively. But enough. Random stuff at first, memes, gym schedules, dumb comments about everyday things. Then more. Are you always this quiet in person or just with me? Only when you're staring at me like that. What like? You know exactly what I mean. Yeah, I do. It was easy. Too easy. And that made it more dangerous than anything else. By Sunday, we weren't pretending anymore. Not even a little. We met at the gym again, same as always, but this time, when he walked up to me, he didn't hesitate. Didn't test the space. His hand brushed mine, and stayed there for a second longer than necessary. No one noticed. Or if they did, they didn't care. But I noticed. And so did he. You're not pulling away anymore, Dave said quietly. I glanced at him. Neither are you. He smirked. Yeah. There was something lighter about him now. Less unsure. Like whatever hesitation he had before? It wasn't gone, but it wasn't stopping him anymore. Later that day, we ended up back at my place. That part happened a lot faster than I expected. Not planned. Not discussed. Just natural. We were talking outside again, same spot as before, and at some point I said, "You want to come up?" And he just, "Yeah." No hesitation. No overthinking. So now we were here. My place suddenly feeling a lot smaller than it ever had before. You always this neat? Dave asked, looking around. I like knowing where my stuff is. Or you like control, he said casually. I gave him a look. You're not psychoanalyzing my apartment now, too? He laughed. Just saying. There was a brief pause. Silence. Not awkward. Just loaded. Because we both knew why he was here. Even if either of us said it yet. I leaned back against the counter, crossing my arms slightly. You're quiet, I said. Dave glanced at me. Yeah, he admitted. Why? He stepped a little closer. Because this is where it gets real. I let out a small breath. It wasn't real before? It was, he said. This is just different. He wasn't wrong. Being out there, in public, in passing moments, that was one thing. This? Alone. No distractions. No easy exits. This was a choice. You can still leave, I said. I don't know why I said it. Maybe to give him an out. Maybe to give myself one. Dave shook his head. I don't want to. Okay. Do you? I held his gaze. No. That was enough. He closed the distance again. Slower this time. More deliberate. Like he was making sure I had time to stop him if I wanted to. I didn't. When his hand found mine, it felt steady. Less like a question. More like something we'd already answered. You still overthinking? He murmured. Yeah, I admitted. He smiled slightly. You're gonna have to stop at some point. Probably. Maybe now's a good time. I let out a quiet breath. Maybe. And then he kissed me again. And this time? There was no hesitation left at all. I don't know how long we stood there. Could have been seconds. Could have been minutes. Time felt weird when everything else faded out. But I remember this part clearly. At some point, I realized something. Not about him. Not even about us. About me. I wasn't second-guessing it anymore. Not the way I had before. Not the way I thought I would. For something that started with an accidental like. I wasn't questioning if this was a mistake. I was just in it. When we finally pulled back, Dave rested his forehead lightly against mine. Still think it was an accident? He asked quietly. I shook my head. No. And for the first time since all of this started. I meant it. If you asked me a week ago how this would end, I would have laughed. Said nothing would happen. Said Dave was just Dave. Said I knew better than to read into things like that. But standing there in my apartment, his hands still loosely wrapped around mine, his presence filling the space like it belonged there? Yeah. I didn't know anything. We didn't rush. That's the part that surprised me the most. After everything, the tension, the build-up, the way it had been escalating nonstop, I expected things to move fast. But they didn't. Instead, we slowed down. Not because we had to. Because we chose to. We ended up on the couch. Not even doing anything at first. Just sitting there, shoulders brushing, talking about random stuff like we always did. Except now, every small touch meant something. Every glance lingered a little longer. Every pause felt intentional. You're different here, Dave said at some point. I glanced at him. In my own apartment? Yeah. He smirked slightly. Less guarded. I leaned back into the couch. Or maybe you're just paying more attention. Maybe, he admitted. I like it. That simple. And for once, I didn't deflect it. Yeah? I asked. Yeah. There was a quiet moment after that. The kind that doesn't need filling. His hand found mine again, absent-minded at first, like he wasn't even thinking about it. But he didn't pull away. Neither did I. You still figuring it out? I asked after a second. Dave glanced at me. Yeah, he said. But I'm not as confused as I was. That's good. He nodded slightly, then added, I know I want this. I held his gaze. Yeah? Yeah. That word again. Simple. But steady. I studied him for a second, trying to see if there was hesitation. Doubt. Anything that would tell me this might fall apart the second it got too real. But there wasn't. Not in that moment. And I realized something else too. I wasn't waiting for it to fall apart anymore. So what does that mean for us? I asked. Dave leaned back slightly, thinking. It means, he said slowly, we stop acting like this is temporary. That landed. Because up until now, that's exactly what this felt like. Something intense. Something real. But maybe not something that would last. And if it gets complicated? I asked. He huffed quietly. It already is. Fair. But I'm still here, he added. I nodded. So am I. Another one of those quiet moments. But this one felt different. Less tense. More settled. You know, Dave said after a second, a faint smile pulling at his mouth. All this because you couldn't keep your thumb under control. I rolled my eyes. You're never letting that go, are you? Not a chance. I shook my head, but I was smiling. Yeah, I said. Well, I accidentally liked it. Dave looked at me for a second. I don't think you did. I raised an eyebrow. Oh yeah? No, he said, leaning a little closer. I think some part of you knew exactly what you were doing. I let out a quiet breath. Maybe, I admitted. Because at this point, that felt more true than anything else. He leaned in again. Slow. Deliberate. Like he didn't need to rush anymore. And when he kissed me this time, it felt different. Not like a question. Not like a test. Just something we both chose. Later that night, after he left, I sat there for a while. Alone again. Same apartment. Same routine. But everything felt different. Lighter. Clearer. I picked up my phone without thinking, opening that same app. Scrolled for a second. Then found it. That picture. Still there. Still the same. I looked at it for a moment, then smiled slightly. And this time? When I tapped the screen, I didn't hesitate. I left the like. Because, yeah, I accidentally liked it. And somehow, that's where everything started.